I swear, I was just feeling emotional late at night, and in a moment of weakness, I clicked on some novel app. The book was called, Even If I Fall to the Dust, I Will Cross Mountains and Cease to Love You. And wow, the tags boldly read, Reunion After a Broken Relationship, and Perfect Ending. At that moment, I thought to myself, is there really such a pure love story in this day and age? But after binge reading it all night, I was so infuriated I nearly dropped dead on the spot. How absurd is this plot? To put it simply, the original Merrick, who is also the male lead of the book, is a billionaire CEO who is pure-hearted but brainless. The female lead, Evelyn, is a resilient White Lotus. The plot's toxicity is mainly concentrated on the female lead's male best friend, Miles. In the original story, Miles has a stomachache, so Evelyn abandons Merrick, who is undergoing surgery for a gastric perforation, to go cook him porridge. When Miles' company goes bankrupt, Evelyn forces Merrick to transfer a core project to save him, threatening to go on a hunger strike, jump off a building, or commit suicide if he refuses. Even more shocking, Miles got drunk and lay on Evelyn's bed. When Merrick opened the door and walked in, Evelyn actually slapped him, crying and shouting, "Merrick! Miles is just in a bad mood. How could you have such dirty thoughts about our pure friendship? You've disappointed me so much." The most suffocating part is the ending. Miles got himself into prison by messing around, and Evelyn cried her heart out. To cheer Evelyn up, Merrick pulled strings to get Miles released and even gave him most of his fortune as compensation. In the end, Merrick, worn out from long-term exhaustion and heartbreak, fell terminally ill at a young age. By his sickbed, Evelyn held his hand, smiled through her tears, and said, "Merrick, I forgive you. We've mended our broken relationship." Then Merrick closed his eyes with a happy smile. So this is the perfect ending. More like, the terminally ill male lead smiles peacefully in death while the toxic bestie cheerfully inherits the fortune. My blood pressure skyrocketed, and I hammered my keyboard so hard it nearly smoked as I left a 1,000-word scathing review in the comments. Author, do you have any idea what a perfect ending actually means? This male lead is a complete brain-dead idiot. If I were Merrick, I'd grind those two bastards' ashes into sesame paste and feed them to the dogs. Ding dong. With a crisp system notification sound, everything went black before my eyes. Chapter 1. The next time I opened my eyes, there was no dazzling white light, no old man with a divine presence, only a strong, pungent, cheap perfume smell. Merrick. Are you even listening to me? A sharp, shrill voice burst beside my ear. I shook my drowsy head and took in the scene before me. It was a luxurious Western restaurant, with a long marble table set with Kobe beef and French red wine. The woman sitting across from me, dressed in a white cotton dress, had red-rimmed eyes, looking as if she had suffered a great injustice. And beside her stood a young man in a suit, his face pale, staring at me with a triumphant, provocative gaze. The scene, the dialogue, the overwhelming suffocation, holy crap. I've transmigrated into a book. And of all things, I've ended up as this guy named Merrick, the biggest scapegoat ever. According to my brain's memory, which works at speeds rivaling quantum speed reading, the plot is currently at the 3rd chapter of the original story. Evelyn comes with her guy best friend Miles to find Merrick. She demands that Merrick transfer a newly acquired entertainment company directly to Miles, reasoning that Miles has talent but nowhere to showcase it. As my boyfriend, isn't it only right for you to give him a hand? In the original story, although the original Merrick felt aggrieved inside, seeing Evelyn's tears made him panic. Not only did he sign the contract immediately, but he also kept apologizing, afraid of displeasing his goddess. Merrick. What's that look in your eyes? Evelyn slammed her wine glass heavily onto the table when she saw me silent for a long time. Miles has stayed up all night for this project. He just wants a stage to prove himself. You're so rich, what's the big deal about giving him one of your companies? Do you even realize how calculating and repulsive you look right now, weighing pros and cons like that? Miles tugged at Evelyn's sleeve at just the right moment, his tone dripping with false modesty thick enough to soak an elephant. Evelyn, forget it. Merrick is a businessman. It's only natural that he prioritizes profit. I can only blame myself for not having a good family background. I don't deserve to survive in this circle. Don't argue with Merrick because of me. It's not worth it. Look at that, just look at that. A textbook example of retreating to advance. If the original owner were here, he'd probably be on his knees by now, repenting for not being a charity organization. But sorry, sitting inside this body right now is the golden troll who just went toe-to-toe with 500 haters online. I leisurely cut a piece of beef, put it in my mouth, chewed a few times, swallowed, then pulled out a tissue and elegantly wiped my lips. Merrick. Did you hear me? Apologize to Miles. Evelyn raised her voice. I looked up, flashed an incredibly bright smile, and spat out a single word at Miles, scram. The restaurant fell instantly silent, so still you could hear a pin drop. Evelyn was stunned, and Miles froze as well. What did you say? Evelyn could hardly believe her ears. In her memory, Merrick never even dared to raise his voice at her, so how could he tell someone to get lost in front of an outsider today? I said, tell him to get lost. I leaned back in my chair, crossed my legs, and even had the audacity to roll my eyes at Miles. Can't understand plain English. Should I translate it into Spanish, French, or Japanese for you? Get lost, Mr. Leach who lives off a sugar mommy. Evelyn screamed and stood up. Merrick. How could you humiliate Miles like this? He's in poor health, and you're going to make him angry. If his health is that bad, he should be lining up at the crematorium, not coming here to demand my company. I sneered coldly and directly pressed the service bell on the table. The bodyguards and restaurant manager quickly jogged over. Sir, what are your orders? I pointed at the shameless couple across from me. Throw these two barking pests out of here. Also, spread the word, from now on, Miles and dogs are banned from this restaurant and all establishments under Glory Summit Group. Oh wait, sorry, that's an insult to dogs. Dogs have more dignity than him. Merrick. Are you out of your mind? I'm breaking up with you. You're going to regret this. Evelyn was shaking with rage, tears finally streaming down her face, but this time, it wasn't an act of playing pitiful, she was simply furious. Miles's face was pale as a ghost, his finger trembling as he pointed at me. Merrick, don't push it. Fortune changes like the wheel of fate, don't look down on people. Oh, still clinging to the "don't bully the youth in poverty" line. You're almost 30 and still poor, that's just your own damn fault. I waved my hand. Hurry up and leave. Don't waste my time while I'm eating. The bodyguards didn't care about any of that. They were paid by my Glory Summit Group, so they immediately grabbed Miles and Evelyn and threw them out of the restaurant door like discarded dogs. Watching the two of them in such a miserable state outside the floor-to-ceiling window, I let out a long, satisfying sigh. So satisfying. What is OOC? This is pure, unadulterated OOC. I'm here to live my life, not to be a punching bag. Since I have the script in hand, let's take it slow from here on out. Chapter 2. Over the next few days, Evelyn practically blew up my phone. On social media, she sent countless long voice messages, all centered on one main idea. Merrick, you've really broken my heart this time. If you buy that entertainment company and give it to Miles, and apologize to him publicly, I might consider forgiving you and not breaking up with you. I stared at these messages and almost burst out laughing. Does this girl have some fundamental misunderstanding of her own charm? Or did the original owner spoil her so much that she doesn't even understand the basics anymore? I directly blocked her number and deleted my social accounts as well. However, judging by the melodramatic plot of the original story, after the failure of the first confrontation, Miles would soon activate his second skill, setting up a trap to frame someone. In the original 5th chapter, Miles deliberately staged a false accident at a business dinner to get back at Merrick. He planned to roll down the stairs himself as Merrick passed by, then insist that Merrick had pushed him. Evelyn would conveniently witness the scene, then cause a commotion at the dinner, forcing Merrick to publicly admit it was his fault, ruining his reputation, and paying a hefty sum in medical and emotional damages. TSK, such a cliché plot, even short videos nowadays wouldn't bother with it. I sat in the leather swivel chair in my office, coffee cup in hand, a confident smile curling at the corners of my mouth. Since you enjoy rolling downstairs, I'll help you build an even bigger stage for it. I called my special assistant and college best friend, the only clear-headed utility character in the original story, the steady, pragmatic, and tough Vice President Sean. Sean, do me a favor. Go ahead, as long as you're not asking me to buy Evelyn soy milk at 3 in the morning again, I'm open to anything. Sean's voice carried a note of exhaustion and disdain. Clearly, he had cleaned up plenty of the original protagonist's mindless messes before. I smiled and said, "Don't worry. From now on, that name won't appear in my life. At tonight's A-City charity gala, set up a few extra camera positions for me. Especially the safety stairwell on the second floor leading to the backyard, install 8 cameras for me there, covering every angle, no blind spots, in crisp 4K with night vision capabilities. Also, get in touch with a few entertainment media outlets we know well and have them station reporters at the stairwell entrance, ready to snap up big news at any moment." On the other end of the line, Sean was silent for a solid half-minute. "Merrick, you finally decided to take some brain tonic. What are you planning to do?" "Nothing much, just inviting some refined folks to watch a spectacular acrobatics show." That night, City A's Grand Hotel was ablaze with lights and shimmering with splendor. Dressed in a custom-tailored suit, holding a champagne glass in hand, I looked every bit the part of a refined and elegant billionaire CEO. And Miles and Evelyn actually managed to sneak in. Oh, I almost forgot, in the original story, Evelyn stole Merrick's secondary card to buy the invitation. Sure enough, halfway through the dinner, Miles started frantically signaling me with his eyes. He held a glass of red wine, deliberately lingering around the secluded corridor on the second floor, occasionally glancing back at me. That look in his eyes was just like a seductive spirit trying to lure Tang Sanzang into a cave. I sneered inwardly, but on the surface, I pretended to be tipsy and impulsive, striding over to follow him. "Merrick, you finally agreed to see me alone." Miles stood at the stairwell exit, with more than 20 steps stretching downward behind him. A cold smirk hung on his face. "Evelyn hasn't been able to eat or sleep because of you these past few days. If you have any conscience left, you should sign the contract. Otherwise, don't blame me for being unpleasant." "Oh. And how exactly do you plan to be unpleasant?" I said, hands in my pockets, standing a full 2 meters away from him, refusing to take a single step closer. Miles frowned slightly when he saw how far I was standing, clearly realizing that this distance wasn't conducive to his accident staging technique. He had no choice but to grit his teeth and take a step forward on his own, then shouted, "Merrick, you've gone too far. Even if you push me, I won't give in." The moment the words left his mouth, he suddenly clenched his teeth and, using the momentum of his body, exaggeratedly threw himself backward. Like a worn-out sack, he tumbled and rolled down the stairs. "Ah! My leg. My back." The agonized scream instantly echoed through the entire emergency stairwell. Miles. Almost right on cue, Evelyn rushed out of the nearby restroom, still holding her phone as she recorded a video. Without even glancing at me, she threw herself down the stairs, clutching Miles, whose face was covered in blood as he writhed in pain, and burst into loud sobs. "Merrick. You murderer. You pushed Miles down the stairs just to vent your personal grudge. I'm calling the police. I'll make sure you rot in jail." Evelyn turned her head and roared at me with a face full of venom. At that moment, the guests and reporters, who had heard the commotion, began to gather around. "Oh my God, isn't that Merrick? What's going on? I heard that Mr. Merrick pushed Miss Evelyn's friend down." TSK, you never truly know a person. He might be successful in business, but in private, he's so ruthless. The onlookers began whispering among themselves. Miles lay on the ground, spitting blood foam, probably bit through a blood capsule, while weakly pulling at Evelyn. "Evelyn, forget it, don't blame Merrick. It was my fault for being careless, I'm useless, ugh. What an act. What a waste it is that he hasn't won an Oscar for Best Actor." Evelyn cried even harder, pointing at me and shouting, "Everyone saw that. Merrick is nothing but a bully who takes advantage of his power. If anything happens to Miles, I'll fight you to the death." Facing the accusations from the crowd and the lenses of long cameras, I remained completely calm. I even took out my phone from my pocket and glanced at the time leisurely. Brilliant, truly brilliant. I clapped slowly as I descended the stairs, stopping 3 steps away from them. "Mr. Miles, you must have practiced that flat fall into a Thomas Flair role for a long time, haven't you? But remember, professional moves, don't try this at home. Merrick. You're still making sarcastic remarks at a time like this. Everyone is watching, and the cameras are recording." Evelyn shouted. Exactly, the security cameras were indeed recording. I smiled slightly and turned to look at Sean behind me. "Sean, let's move up the big screen interactive segment we prepared. After all, happiness shared is happiness multiplied." Sean adjusted his glasses, revealing the first relaxed smile in days. "Sure thing, sir." The next second, the massive LED projection screen at the center of the banquet hall flickered, and the original charity promo video was replaced by a high-definition clip. In the video, from 8 different angles, everything that had just happened was clearly recreated frame by frame. In the footage, I was standing with my hands in my pockets, a full 2 meters away from Miles. Miles was shouting at the air all by himself, and then, like a drama queen, made an exaggerated leap backward, tumbling down the stairs on his own. The best part was that one close-up shot even captured Miles, as he was rolling down, deliberately using his hand to shield his head to protect his face, and casually taking a blood capsule out of his mouth and biting it open. The entire venue fell into a dead silence. The journalists, who had prepared press releases ready to splash headlines like, "Tycoon's intentional assault," were utterly dumbfounded. "Puffed, ha ha ha." Someone in the crowd couldn't hold it in first, bursting into earth-shattering laughter. Then, the entire banquet hall erupted into chaos. "Oh my God, what kind of new scam is this? A performance with no props. Using Qigong to push someone from 2 meters away, right? Is Merrick practicing the 18 palms of the dragon subduing? That's hilarious, did you see that close-up? He even bit his own blood pack. Ha ha ha, I'm dying laughing, what a waste he didn't become an actor." Miles' screams came to an abrupt halt. He lay frozen on the ground, his face turning from white to red, from red to purple, and finally to a deep violet. Evelyn was also dumbfounded. She stared at the image on the big screen, and with a clatter, her phone slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. I crossed my arms and looked down at them from a height. Miss Evelyn, and the big star Miles. Extortion, false accusations, and provocation. With these charges combined, how many years do you think they'll be eating prison meals? The lawyer from the Glory Summit Group legal department standing behind Sean adjusted his glasses and smiled slightly. If we add the reputational damage caused by their actions, which led to fluctuations in Glory Summit Group's stock price, it's enough to keep them behind bars for life and leave them bankrupt in the process. Merrick, it's not like that, it's a misunderstanding. Evelyn panicked, scrambling on all fours to grab at my pants leg. I stepped back in disgust. "Don't touch me. It's a custom haute couture suit, you can't afford it. Save your words for the police. The next few days will be quiet and uneventful, so I hope you can get a good night's sleep in the detention center." Amid the jeers of the entire crowd and the frantic flashing of cameras, Miles and Evelyn were taken away by the arriving police, carried out on stretchers while handcuffed. That was the first battle. Public humiliation plus detention, you're welcome. Chapter 3. However, the corrective power of the plot is always astonishing. After all, Evelyn is the female lead, and Miles carries the aura of the first love. After spending a few days in detention, Miles' family sold everything they had, and Evelyn begged around, reportedly seeking help from some backup male supporting character in the original story, to secure their bail. Having suffered such a crushing defeat, that scumbag kept a low profile for a while. But soon, they cooked up a major scheme. Original Chapter 15, Evelyn's mother suddenly falls, gravely ill, and needs a kidney transplant. Instigated by Miles, Evelyn discovers that Merrick's blood type is a perfect match with her mother's. As a result, Evelyn uses all sorts of moral blackmail, throwing tantrums, crying, and making scenes to force Merrick into donating a kidney to save her mother. In the original story, the protagonist was actually moved by Evelyn's filial piety and foolishly gave up a kidney, leading to a complete physical breakdown later on. When I learned of this plot point, I was drinking bird's nest soup. Hearing the system's vague plot hints, I nearly spat the bird's nest soup all over Sean's face. Sell a kidney. Her mother needs a kidney, what does that have to do with me? Do I look like an organ trafficker, or a turtle wading in a wishing pool? I grabbed a napkin and wiped my mouth, ranting wildly. Did the original author have a flushing toilet installed in their brain? How can they make this feel forced and touching? The secretary knocked and entered, looking oddly pensive as she reported, "Sir, Miss Evelyn is kneeling downstairs at the company entrance. She's brought a bunch of reporters and a banner, claiming you refused to help the dying and are heartlessly wealthy." I let out a cold laugh. Oh, she's upgraded from moral blackmail to a full public trial. Let's go, Sean. Let's head down and watch the show. Today, I'm going to give them a lesson in taking the green tea path and leaving her with nothing to stand on. At the entrance of the company, Evelyn, dressed in pure white, knelt on the hard concrete floor, crying pitifully. Beside her lay the hospital's critical illness notice, and around her were the self-media bloggers she had hired, who were condemning my cold-heartedness with spittle flying as they faced the cameras. As soon as Evelyn saw me come out, she immediately shouted, "Merrick! Please, save my mom. You're so rich, losing one kidney means nothing to you. But that's my mom's life. You said you loved me before, does your love not even amount to a single kidney?" The unscrupulous reporters around immediately shoved their microphones to my mouth. "Merrick, are you really willing to watch your fiancée's mother die just to preserve your own body? Merrick, as a public figure, don't you think this behavior is too selfish?" Miles, still in a wheelchair from his last fall that hadn't fully healed, fanned the flames on the side. "Merrick, Evelyn is kneeling before you. You're wealthy and prosperous, can't you just do it as a charity? One of your kidneys could bring happiness to a family. The happiness of one family after another." I looked at the cameras and took a deep breath. The next second, the coldness on my face vanished without a trace, replaced by an extreme pallor, fragility, and a near-desperate grief. My body swayed slightly, and I tottered as if about to fall. Fortunately, Sean behind me caught me just in time. "Merrick! Merrick, hang in there!" Sean suddenly shouted at the top of his lungs, his acting even more immersed in the role than mine. With trembling hands covering my chest, my eyes instantly turned red, and 2 lines of clear tears streamed down my cheeks. I had put in eye drops before coming. I looked at Evelyn, my voice trembling, hoarse, filled with endless grievances and sorrow. "Evelyn, how could you push me like this? Do you have any idea how hard it was for me to keep this from you?" Evelyn was stunned, her crying abruptly stopping. The reporters around us were also frozen in shock. Trembling, I pulled out a long-forged, terminal illness diagnosis certificate from my chest, letting it fall to the ground with a thud. Sean bent down to pick it up and, with a pained expression, showed it to the surrounding reporters. "Take a look, everyone. This is why our CEO couldn't donate a kidney. He was diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer half a month ago. It has already spread. He doesn't have much time left himself. To keep Miss Evelyn from grieving, he has been hiding his condition, coughing up blood every day while working tirelessly, trying to leave behind a huge growth fund for Miss Evelyn before his time runs out." Just at the right moment, I turned my head aside, covering my mouth as I burst into a violent fit of coughing. Cough, cough, cough. Cough. Sean quickly handed me a white handkerchief. When I moved the handkerchief away, there was a startling patch of blood on it, actually, ketchup mixed with the crew's fake blood. The entire venue was in shock. Reporters' flashbulbs went off like crazy, and all the close-up shots were focused on that blood-stained handkerchief. Oh my God. Merrick actually has terminal stomach cancer. He's been bearing all this alone, just so his fiancée wouldn't worry. This is just too noble. Whoa. And look at this woman, actually forcing a terminal cancer patient to donate a kidney. Is she even human? The tide of public opinion made a 180-degree turn within 3 seconds. Weakly leaning on Sean, I looked at Evelyn with tears in my eyes, speaking earnestly, every word dripping with pain. Evelyn, it's not that I don't want to save your mom. I'm already in the late stages of cancer. My organs have long since failed and become cancerous. If I were to give your mom this kidney loaded with cancer cells, I wouldn't be saving her, I'd be harming her. How could I be so selfish? At this point, I turned to look at Miles, who was sitting in a wheelchair, my eyes filled with hope and emotion. But, Miles, your loyalty to Evelyn is known throughout the city. You're young, strong, and healthy, and you get along with Evelyn's mom like a mother and son. Since you care so much about Evelyn and want her family to be happy, you must be willing to donate your kidney to Evelyn's mother, right? Miles' face instantly turned green. Why should I? No, my blood type may not match. It matches. It matches perfectly. Sean chimed in, pulling out another paper from his folder. Mr. Miles, what a coincidence. When you were hospitalized last time, our CEO took a special interest in your medical report. You are also type AB, a perfect match with Mrs. Mabel. And all your health indicators are excellent, you're just right for kidney donation. I immediately started clapping, tears streaming down my face as I shouted, Miles. What a man. Your love for Evelyn is absolutely moving. Everyone look, this Mr. Miles is about to voluntarily donate his kidney for true love. Media friends, give this great male bestie a close-up. He is the city's most wonderful male bestie. Yes. Donate a kidney. Donate a kidney. The moved onlookers and reporters around began cheering wildly. Mr. Miles, didn't you just say, missing one kidney is no big deal? Now it's time to prove it. What's wrong? Can't take it when it's your turn. Don't tell me you're a fake philanthropist. Miles sat in his wheelchair, completely surrounded by a dense crowd of cameras and relentless questioning. His mouth hung open, his face pale, and sweat poured down like rain. He wanted to refuse, but the moral pedestal he had built for himself was too high, and now it had come crashing down on him. Evelyn was also stunned, glancing at the gastric cancer diagnosis and bloodied handkerchief in my hand, then at Miles, who seemed about to have a stroke from sheer panic. For a moment, she had no idea what to say. Miles, I wish you a successful surgery and a speedy recovery. I'll cover all your nutrition expenses, okay? I dabbed the ketchup off the corner of my mouth with a napkin, shot Miles a wink, and then, leaning on Sean for support, feebly retreated back into the company building. As for whether Miles ended up donating after all. According to Sean, he took an overnight train to another province to avoid donating a kidney, only to be cornered at the train station by Evelyn and her crew. Under the coercion of morality and public opinion, he was crying as he was pushed into the operating room and had a kidney removed. This is what they call turning the tables. Trying to blackmail me. First, see if your own neck is tough enough. Chapter 4. After these 2 rounds of trouble, Evelyn and Miles were completely drained. Losing one kidney left Miles so weak he felt as fragile as paper. Evelyn's reputation took a nosedive online after her despicable act of cornering her terminally ill fiancé at the company entrance was exposed, instantly branding her as a vicious woman that everyone despised. Meanwhile, I rode the tragic yet inspiring persona of tenaciously remaining at work despite terminal cancer to drive Glory Summit Group's stock up by the daily limit for 5 consecutive days. However, I knew the core conflict of the original story was about to unfold. Chapter 30 of the original novel, Glory Summit Group faced massive fines and the threat of bankruptcy due to a leak of a core business secret. In the original story, it was actually Miles who colluded with a competitor to steal Merrick's business secrets and fabricated false evidence, framing Merrick's friend Sean for the crime. Evelyn would kneel before Merrick, crying, "Merrick, Miles is doing this for our future. Sean is just an employee, why can't you let him take the blame for Miles? At worst, we can give him more money. If you don't agree, Miles will go to prison, and I won't want to live either." In the original story, the original Merrick was so swayed by Evelyn that he cruelly fired Sean and forced him to take the fall, ruining his future and causing a complete rift between them. As a result, Merrick lost his most loyal ally, and Miles eventually drained the company dry. Tisk, TSK. The same trick loses its charm after the third time. In the office, I sneered as I watched the alarm system triggered on my computer screen. Miles, you really did make your move. You thought that by secretly copying my office key and getting your hands on the 10 billion new energy development plan, you could turn the tables. Actually, that business plan was a specially tailored, bankruptcy gift package that Sean and I spent a whole week creating just for him. All the core data in it had been subtly tweaked. It looked flawless on the surface, but once put into production, it would trigger a chain reaction of explosions, leaving the investors stripped bare of everything, not even a penny left. Merrick, the fish has taken the bait. Sean walked in, visibly excited. Miles has already sold the confidential information to Haven Enterprise Holdings. Haven Enterprise Holdings is now preparing to hold a press conference, announcing they have beaten us to the punch in developing this new technology and plan to sue Glory Summit Group for plagiarism. I stood up and adjusted my suit and tie. Good. When do they plan to hold the press conference? At 2 p.m. today, at the A-City International Convention and Exhibition Center. Notify all the media. We're going to. How can this play work without me, the victim? At 2 p.m., the convention center was packed. Blake, the president of Haven Enterprise Holdings, stood on stage in high spirits, grandly boasting about how they had, independently developed, this groundbreaking new energy technology. Meanwhile, Miles and Evelyn, as specially invited contributors, were sitting in the VIP seats, dressed up to the nines, basking in the crowd's adulation. Miles, in particular, though his complexion still showed signs of weakness from losing a kidney, the smugness of a pettyman basking in his moment of triumph was practically oozing out of him. Blake, according to the information we've received, Glory Summit Group seems to have an identical technical proposal. How would you explain that? A reporter from the audience asked sharply. Blake let out a cold laugh and was about to speak when Miles stood up first, grabbed the microphone, and put on a grand display of righteousness as if ready to condemn his own kin. Regarding this matter, I have more say. I am a former close friend of Merrick, and I can confirm that it was Sean, the deputy general manager of Glory Summit Group, who orchestrated the theft of Haven Enterprise Holdings' confidential information. Although Merrick himself was unaware, he condoned his subordinates and is complicit as an accessory. We have already filed a lawsuit with the court. Evelyn also chimed in, wiping her tears. Yes, Merrick has disappointed me so much. For the sake of business interests, he stooped to such dirty tricks. I am standing up today to expose him. Clap, clap, clap. The crisp sound of applause suddenly came from the entrance of the venue. Everyone turned to look, and there I was, dressed in black, my face pale, actually covered in foundation, leaning on Sean, stepping into the venue step by step, looking profoundly heavy and tragically heroic. When I appeared, a flicker of panic passed through Evelyn and Miles' eyes, but it was quickly replaced by smugness. In their view, I was already a trapped fish in a barrel. Merrick, perfect timing. What do you have to say for yourself? Evelyn shouted at me, pointing. I walked to the front, not looking at Blake or Miles, but slowly turned around to face the reporters and cameras filling the hall. I let out a deep sigh, and in that moment, the grievance, resentment, and despair within me seemed to take on a tangible form. I don't need to explain, because I'm tired. I forced a bitter smile, my voice echoing through the venue via the microphone, carrying a desolate tone that set up a dramatic contrast. I, Merrick, in the 10 years since starting my business, have always stood upright and walked straight. To my employees, I've never been stingy with dividends. To society, I donate over 100 million annually. But to you, Evelyn. I jerked my head around, pointing at Evelyn, my eyes filled with a bitter, accusing pain. I gave you my heart and soul. If you wanted the stars, I wouldn't dare offer you the moon. You found my wealth vulgar, and I silently endured it. You brought your male bestie to eat my food, stay in my home, use my things. I accepted it all. Even when your mother fell ill, despite being terminally ill myself, I supported you without resentment. The media in the audience stirred, and many began casting sympathetic glances at me. But what about you both? I sharply raised my voice, trembling with rage. You conspired with outsiders to steal the core secrets that Glory Summit Group spent years and billions to develop. Not only that, but you tried to pin the blame on my most trusted brother, Sean. I grabbed Sean beside me, my eyes red-rimmed. Sean and I started our business together back in college. For 10 years, he's been with me through thick and thin without a single regret. He's given everything for this company. He's 30 years old and hasn't even had a relationship. Miles, how dare you call him a thief? Evelyn, how could you force me to fire him and send him to jail, just to secure your and Miles' wealth and status? Have you two no conscience at all? This roar, brimming with raw emotion and overwhelming force, echoed through the entire venue, leaving it buzzing. The reporters below the stage were instantly stirred up, shameless. That pair of scumbags are nothing but beasts. Merrick is so wronged. Oh my God, I almost want to cry. True brotherhood, Merrick is still protecting his best friend even now. What a real man. Evelyn's face turned pale as I shouted at her. She tried to defend herself. You're lying. This technology belongs to Haven Enterprise Holdings. Yours is a copy. A copy. I suddenly withdrew all the grief and indignation from my face, a strange, almost mad smile curling at the corner of my lips. I pulled a remote control out of my pocket and pressed it lightly. The big screen on the stage changed once again. This time, it no longer showed surveillance footage but rather the decryption of the real core parameters of the new energy technology, along with a live feed of a factory that Haven Enterprise Holdings had just put into production. Blake, Miles, did you forget that all technical documents of Glory Summit Group come with an exclusive patented, digital watermark, and a self-destruct program? I said slowly and deliberately, the part you stole really was new energy technology, but it's a discarded plan we eliminated 5 years ago, one with serious safety hazards. I deliberately raised the voltage stability parameter by 3 percentage points. If you run it at full load for more than 2 hours, the factory's capacitors will. Before I could finish speaking, Blake's phone suddenly rang frantically. He answered it with trembling hands, and the voice of his secretary came through with a desperate scream. Disaster. Our new factory exploded. All the equipment is burnt down. When the investors heard that we were involved in stealing confidential information and had a major safety incident, they all withdrew their funding. The company is bankrupt. Bang. Blake's phone fell to the ground. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed onto the stage, suffering a stroke. Meanwhile, Miles and Evelyn in the audience were completely slumped in their chairs, paralyzed. First suppress, then promote, the big net is closing in. I bowed gracefully to the camera. Haven Enterprise Holdings is suspected of illegally obtaining trade secrets and causing a major accident due to non-compliant production. As for Mr. Miles and Miss Evelyn, who provided the documents, I pointed toward the entrance of the venue, where several uniformed economic crime police officers had already entered, handcuffs in hand. Suspected of commercial espionage and massive fraud. You too, please. Chapter 5. If the bankruptcy of Haven Enterprise Holdings was the net I cast, then the final blow against Evelyn and Miles was delivered by someone else, Evelyn's mother, Lady Mabel. In the original story, Lady Mabel was an extremely misogynistic, snobbish shrew to the core. When the original host was her son-in-law, she constantly bossed him around and treated him like a mobile ATM. Now, she learned that her precious daughter not only failed to marry into a wealthy family but had instead become a convict of economic crimes, and that Miles, whom she thought was a golden catch, was not only penniless but also the one who had caused her daughter to end up in prison. Most importantly, after being discharged from the hospital, Madame Mabel discovered that although Miles had donated a kidney to her, due to his previous overindulgence and weakened health, the kidney triggered a severe rejection reaction in Madame Mabel's body. Madame Mabel is now suffering every day, and a second kidney transplant would require an astronomical sum of money. However, since Miles and Evelyn are involved in the case, all their assets have been frozen by the court. This is what they call dogs biting each other, all in a tangle. A month later, the court issued its verdict for Miles and Evelyn. Miles was sentenced to 12 years in prison for theft of trade secrets and extortion. Evelyn, as an accomplice, was sentenced to 5 years in prison. On the day the verdict was announced, a scene that captured the city's attention unfolded. Mrs. Mabel, in her wheelchair, somehow brought a bucket of excrement, yes, literally feces, and trembling, rushed to the entrance of the courthouse. At that moment, Evelyn and Miles were just being escorted out, about to be put into a police car. Miles. You bringer of misfortune. Give me back my daughter. Give me back my life. Mrs. Mabel went wild, pushing past the police officers, lifting the bucket of filth, and drenched Miles and Evelyn from head to toe. Ah! Evelyn let out the most heart-wrenching scream of her life. Her once pure white cotton dress was instantly covered in yellow-brown sludge, reeking of an unbearable stench. Miles was drenched, his mouth full of the filth. He retched and gagged violently, his weakened body, due to a missing kidney, causing him to collapse on his backside in the mire, looking as wretched as a maggot crawling out of a sewer. What kind of broken kidney did you give me? I'm in rejection every single day, popping pills non-stop. You got my daughter thrown in jail, tore my family apart. I'll beat you to death, you childless scumbag. Mrs. Mabel tore off her leather shoe and struck Miles across the face with it. Smack. 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 Miles's once fairly clean-cut face was instantly swollen into a pig's head, caked with foul waste. The sight was so appalling that even the nearby cops covered their noses and stepped back 3 paces. Tisk, TSK, now that's something. Using someone else's knife to kill, a mother stabbing her own son, this double dose of karma is simply perfect. I sat in the car across the street, binoculars in hand, munching on popcorn and savoring the show. Merrick, are you really not going to step on them again? Sean asked while flipping through documents beside him. Step on them? I'd rather not dirty my shoes. I put down the binoculars and brushed the crumbs off my hands. Is everything done? All done. The shares of Glory Summit Group have been cashed out at a high price, and the overseas assets and new company have been registered. As per your instructions, we are now free, with a net worth of about $10 billion. Sean adjusted his glasses, his tone calm, but a hint of joy from sudden wealth hidden in his eyes. I leaned back in my chair and stretched. Perfect. Let's go to the airport. I've had enough of this damn place's melodrama. I'm going to a tropical island for a vacation, rent 10 yachts, and go fishing every day. The car started, leaving behind the noise, the stench, and the desperate cries of that scumbag couple, completely out of sight. Epilogue, a happy reunion. More like remodeling a trash can. 5 years later. Maldives. Blue skies, white clouds, coconut groves, and swaying palm shadows. Dressed in a floral shirt and beach shorts, wearing sunglasses, I lounged on a deck chair on the private beach, holding a fresh coconut, leisurely sipping the coconut water. Sean was beside me, handling the financial statements of the overseas company on his laptop. In 5 years, not only did we not go bankrupt, but our overseas ventures flourished, tripling our assets. Merrick, Sean suddenly closed the laptop, looking at me with a peculiar expression. What's up? Is some heiress from a wealthy family trying to invite me to dinner again? Tell them I've locked my heart away and only want to fish now. I lazily turned over. No. News just came from back home, Evelyn has been released from prison. My action of sipping the coconut water paused, then I rolled my eyes. Released from prison, so what? What, am I supposed to prepare a fire-jumping ceremony for her to ward off bad luck? She bought a one-way ticket to the Maldives. She used all the allowances she saved up over the years sewing in prison, plus money borrowed from here and there. Sean pointed at the entrance to the beach. Look, she's already here. I raised an eyebrow, took off my sunglasses, and looked over. At the far end of the beach, a woman in faded jeans and a plaid shirt was trudging unsteadily toward me. 5 years behind bars had completely stripped Evelyn of her pristine aura. Her skin was rough, and the corners of her eyes were lined with fine wrinkles. She no longer carried the arrogance and affectation of the past. She walked up to my lounge chair and, with a thud, knelt down again. But this time, there were no reporters around, no camera flashes, only the salty sea breeze. Merrick. Evelyn looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. Her expression was exactly the same as the emotional reunion seen at the end of the original novel. I was wrong. I've regretted it every day for the past 5 years. Inside, I realized that you were the only one who was ever good to me in this world. Miles is finished, he died in prison. I have nothing left now, except you. You said before that you would wait for me forever. Can we make amends and start over? Wow. The lines, the tone, the familiar formula. This damn narrative correction force, even at the finale, still trying to shove a second-chance romance down my throat. I looked at her, silently for a long time. A glimmer of hope flickered in Evelyn's eyes. She thought I was wavering, because the old Merrick had loved her desperately. She reached out her rough hand, trying to grasp mine. I suddenly grinned and handed the coconut to her. Have a drink, sis. Evelyn was taken aback. Look at this sea, isn't it vast? I pointed at the endless Indian Ocean stretching before us. Evelyn nodded blankly. Vast. Check out my yacht, isn't it cool? I gestured toward the multi-million-dollar luxury yacht docked by the shore. Evelyn nodded again. Cool. I took off my sunglasses, revealing a pair of clear, foolish eyes that exuded ultimate sarcasm, and smiled faintly. Then let me ask you another question. Did you bring a mirror when you went out? Huh. Evelyn was dumbfounded. No mirror. Then you at least have pee, right? I took a slow sip of coconut juice and let out a sigh. Sis, it's been 5 years, how have you not improved at all? Still trying to mend a broken mirror? Even if, for argument's sake, the mirror could be mended, what you'd end up with is still garbage. What, do you think I look like someone who enjoys collecting junk? Merrick. You. Evelyn's tears froze in her eyes. Sean, give her $200 for bus fare. Let her take a cab to the airport and go back home. Don't let her pollute my private beach here. Also, notify security to wash this stretch of sand with disinfectant. After all, places tarnished by a white lily's knees tend to grow fungus. I put my sunglasses back on and lay back down on the lounge chair, leisurely swinging my feet. Sure thing, sir. Sean smiled as he pulled out his wallet. Amidst Evelyn's desperate and heart-wrenching cries of despair, I closed my eyes, basking in the warm sunlight. Reunion after a breakup. Screw that. My new life as $100 billion tycoon has only just begun.